Okay, now let's have a think about some river transportation processes. In other words, how do rivers move the material or load that they've eroded further upstream? We've got four processes we're going to talk about. We're going to do these in size order. So first of all, we're going to talk about traction. And traction, as you can see by the diagram, moves the biggest bits of material, the biggest rocks. And it's not by accident that they're drawn on this diagram at the lower part of the river, on the riverbed, because they don't actually leave the riverbed. So the force of the water gets behind a rock, or gets behind a boulder, and rolls it end over end down the riverbed. And that's how traction works essentially. And as you can imagine, it works best when there's a lot of power in the river. It'll work when it's lower in terms of energy, but it'll only move smaller stones in this energy situation. But when in a flood situation or in a very high flow, it's going to move very, very large boulders. Okay, next up, we're going to talk about saltation, which is the next size process down. And when I say size, I mean the amount on the size of material individually that saltation can move. And you can see again, we've got smaller material moved by saltation. It's the same process that moves sand in a desert, and a particle will be moved along the river profile by bouncing along the riverbed. The river hasn't got enough energy to carry it along completely without touching the banks or the bed, so individual items then bounce up and down along the river profile. And what can happen is, as one particle strikes the bed of the river, it might impact on several others and cause them to shoot out, and it's a bit like a chain reaction. So that's saltation. Okay, the next one we talk about is suspension, and you can see suspension over here. Suspension moves a size of material further down from saltation and further down from traction. And with suspension, material actually doesn't touch the banks or the bed of the river. I mean, it may do, but it doesn't have to. So the size of the sediment is so small that the sediment is carried along just with the flow of the river. And the way this typically looks is that these particles that you can see in the diagram, they would make the river look very murky, very muddy, a sort of orangey, browny colour. And that's a sign that the river's got a lot of suspended sediment, carrying it by suspension. The last method we talk about is solution. And similar word, obviously it's the same word as a river erosion process, and this is where material that is so small it can actually be dissolved in the river flow, and it's just carried along completely invisible to the naked eye. So the four methods again: we've got traction with very large material, we've got saltation with small material that bounces, we've got suspension with very small material that's carried along in the flow of the river, and solution where tiny microscopic particles are actually dissolved. I thank you.